With what is happening in the world right now, I think it's interesting to talk about the subject of time. I think the one question anyone asks themselves during this pandemic is, how long is this now? What is, a minute, a day, a month, or a year? How do we exactly hold time? And how do we let it go?
To me, Into Air is a body of work that primarily deals with time. I say primarily because it also deals with death. Without death, there is no time. I have always felt that time only possesses great beauty and worth in the absence of eternity. That is why much of my practice deals with this holding on to certain moments, because they exist and then are no more. In 2017, what started out as a benign curiosity about holding time in an ephemeral object like ice grew into a full-blown obsession with tracing the disintegration of large sculptural blocks of pigment over the next 3 years. To date, over 100 color glacier blocks have been made in the studio. Each block weighs approximately 60 kilograms and undergoes a 3-week freezing process of building unique pigment masses inside a minus 18-degree industrial freezer. Ice is a perfect material because it cannot last. Its metamorphosis from solid, liquid to air reflects the passage of time. That journey of chasing time from one state to the next has crystallized in a rather expansive body of work, which includes photographs, time-lapse films, and residue paintings. As the work developed, I've referred to the series of photographs as clocks, the films, Time Lost Falling in Love, and the residue paintings, ASHK. Clocks are monumental photo portraits of blocks in disintegration. You could say they are my attempt to capture time in a reimagined form. I find that the way in which we all process time via a cold series of numbers, years, dates, minutes, and seconds, is antithetical to the true nature of time, which is emotional and elastic. Time speeds up when we have fun, slows down while we wait, and stands still when we fall in love. These portraits visualize the shape, color, and texture which time inhabits as a form. What color is 3 p.m.? What skeletal mass does 12 hours inhabit? These were the questions I wanted to ask. Once hauled from the freezer, each block is carefully framed and photographed in 10 specific angles. This process is repeated at intervals of 4 hours until the block erodes entirely. By translating hours, minutes, and seconds into corresponding hues, shapes, and textures, these portraits act as actual clocks, adding a new dimension to the expression of time. Over a year of working on clocks, I felt that I had figured out how to hold time in a static way, but my mind began twitching about taking that process a step further. What about the fluidity of time? How could I express that in an ephemeral block of ice? The result of that question led me down what I called the dark hole of time-lapse videography, which involved an entirely different film production set running in tandem with the production of clocks. Now, a rotating team in the studio was responsible for shooting the 15 to 20 hour collapse of select blocks with me, after which we would meticulously comb and compress the footage into 20-minute films. A sort of inversion happens here. Technically, time has been hyper-sped up in the editing suite, but the resultant languid collapse of pigments in the film, which mirrors the cathartic release of a waterfall in slow motion, makes one who watches it feel like time is gently drifting. If clocks was my endeavor to hold time, and the films were a means to bend time, ASHK, the residue paintings, were my obsession with sieving time. Somewhere along the way, I realized that though I had used ice as a vehicle to chase time from solid to liquid, I had not yet chased it to its end, which if you think about it should be right back to nothingness, right back to air. ASHK is thus a series of residue paintings that was created by the maneuvered staining and evaporation of melted pigment blocks through large sheets of paper. In that final stage of each block's return to air, I've lowered a thick sheet of cotton paper to blanket a pool of melted residue inside a custom vat. Over weeks, I manipulate the vat to allow wet pigment to wash over certain areas, forming residual tributaries, while coagulate in others to encourage the chemical breakdown of pigment, building a topography of blooming shades. The time in which the paper has left its steep causes its fibers to fray, allowing me to peel back parts of its surface to reveal a lighter, distressed finish in some. The resulting landscape of textural hues develops as pigments filter through the steeped paper in the process of evaporation, forming a sedimentary imprint or memory of time moving through two states.
Some days it feels like a madness. What was I trying to do in all of this? Essentially, I had spent the last 3 years chasing a ghost. No one can truly stop time or bend it or catch it, but I think I've tried. That is why I consider Into Air a work of memory and an acceptance of transience. Most importantly, I think it's an ode to the truth that the most beautiful things in the world are the ones that we can never hold on to no matter how hard we try.